Good evening. Welcome to our live webcast of Korean baseball, answering the call for sport in the COVID era. We're featuring Jee-Ho Park and Jerry Royster tonight. My name is Tom Byrne. I'm president of the Korea Society. The Korea Society was established 4 years after the armistice, so that's more than 60 years ago. And of course, this month in June, we mark the 70th anniversary of the beginning of the Korean War. The Korea Society's mission is to enhance understanding, awareness, and cooperation between the peoples of Korea and America. Over the years, over the 6 decades, we focused a lot on policy issues, the importance of the alliance, mutual benefits, both economic and policy and security. Increasingly and recently, we've underscored and Korea's soft power. So we featured, and its influence on American culture. So we featured Korean artists, Korean musicians, Korean authors, Korean chefs, and now Korean baseball. It's my great privilege to introduce Mark Lippert. Mark Lippert was ambassador to Korea in 2014 to 2017. He'll be moderator tonight. And I met Mark for the first time when he was ambassador in Seoul. We also have in the lineup, and Mark will introduce the full lineup. We have Cathy Stevens, who was ambassador to Korea from 2008 to 2011. Both were like extremely popular ambassadors, so they really did a good job on, I think, promoting Korean-American relations. I met Cathy when she was a Peace Corps volunteer in the late 1970s, so I'm dating myself as well as Cathy. And because I was a Peace Corps volunteer in a town called, I worked in a place called Changwon County, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Changwon. It's a city. And they have a new baseball team there, the NC Dinos, one of the new additions to the Korean baseball. So I've never been to a Korean baseball game, but I do have a team I root for. So it's the NC Dinos, and they're currently in first place in KBO. I'd also like to thank Busan Chairman Roy Yoo for helping us organize tonight. This is our first baseball program. So, Mark, the screen is yours.
All right, thanks, Tom. I'm going to forgive you for being a NC Dinos fan. They're in first place. My Doosan Bears are in third. But Tom, as always, it's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and really want to add my sentiment to the great work that the Korea Society does. We have got a all-star lineup tonight. Everybody, good morning to those who are in Korea. Good evening to those here in the United States. Good day to everybody else around the world. We are going to get through a fun, fast-paced, yet culturally significant hour here on the great sport of baseball and its impact on the U.S.-Korea relations. We, again, Tom mentioned some of the players. I'm going to just go through them quickly, look their bios up online. In many respects, a couple of them need no introductions, but I'm going to go to our headliners first. We've got Jee-Ho Park. Everybody knows Jee-Ho, who's followed baseball. He's the first ever Korean to play in Major League Baseball, compiling a 124 win, 98 loss all-time record, which puts him as the winningest pitcher ever born in Asia in the major leagues. You can just go through a long list of things, but just simply to say, he's one of the most consequential figures in sport that Korea has ever known, and we are delighted that he's here tonight. Next, Jerry Royster, a first in his own right, too. He is the first ever foreign manager to take the helm in KBO, and he turned around a then struggling Lotte Giants team, ended a 6-year postseason drought. He is still talked about in the city of Busan today. And I can attest to, I was just in Busan a couple of years ago at a Giants game, and people came up to me and asked me when Jerry Royster was coming back. He also enjoyed a 16-year Major League Baseball career that was outstanding in its own right. There's a lot of elements you could cover in his biography in Major League Baseball, but he ended up with 189 stolen bases, kind of a lost art in baseball that puts him in the Baseball Almanac as one of the all-time stolen base leaders. So Jerry, welcome. Ambassador Stevens, first ever, this is an evening of first ever Peace Corps volunteer to turn ambassador in Korea. She overlapped with Mr. Park, Mr. Royster in their active playing days. She's an outstanding athlete in her own right. She is steeped at the intersection of sport, culture, and politics in Korea, given all of her iterations in Korea and her really remarkable work as a cyclist in Korea that is still remembered to this day. And last but not least, we've got Jee-Ho Yoo. He is Yonhap sports correspondent extraordinaire, a Blue Jays fan. He just wrote a great piece on Yoo Hyun-jin sliding into the #1 slot in the Jays rotation. He's a regular on ESPN. He is really an expert on KBO, and welcome here tonight. I'm looking for a Yonhap sports jacket here to augment my wardrobe. Welcome to all of our panelists. I'm going to just say a couple more words because we want to get to the questions just to set this up. KBO is newish on the scene. It was started in 1982, the Korea Baseball Organization, but baseball is not new to Korea. In fact, there are reports in newspapers of games being played in 1896 between the Marine Corps and a group of U.S. expatriates, as well as a game against the Seoul Athletic Club. There was a goodwill tour in the 1920s that Major League Baseball undertook. There was the United States military that brought the baseball in mass after or during the Korean War, provided equipment timely here with the armistice. And then there was the efforts of the Park Chung-hee era to popularize the game, promote the game, and Korean teams started doing well in international tournament, which in turn started to build a fan base in Korea. And then that brings us to KBO. 1982 started with 6 teams and eventually expanded to 10 teams in the league we know today. And all of us on this call are big fans of the league. So with that, that's the setup. And I'm going to go to Jee-Ho first and basically ask him just for 1 or 2 minutes quickly on the state of the league this year with COVID, with the ESPN deal, just a quick little hit on that. And then I want you to set up our 2 very significant guests here, Chan-Ho Park and Jerry Royster, and their significance. So let me just turn to you, Jee-Ho.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And with the KBO season 2020, this has been a season unlike any other in its history. Because of COVID-19 situation, the regular season was pushed back by more than a month, and then the season began without fans in the stands. I think the timing of this webcast is pretty good because we might have some fans back in the stands, by as early as this coming Friday in Korean time. But going back to the beginning of the season, there was an unusual circumstances that we had, and then with the Major League Baseball not getting on the ground and on the way, and then ESPN deciding to broadcast 6 games from the KBO live per week. It's drawn so many eyeballs on this league for the first time. I just don't think there's been this much interest internationally in the KBO as much as this year. So this has been a very unusual, maybe some bizarre, strange season to say the least. But the players certainly are enjoying their extra exposure to international audience. They're selling merchandise overseas, not just in the US or Canada, but places like Germany, Australia, and parts of Europe. People are purchasing KBO merchandise. So the game is going global, and this has been unprecedented season for the KBO.
All right, thanks for that quick intro. Let's then pivot to you to set up Chan-Ho Park. You mentioned the word unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
Take us back to the 90s. Chan-Ho Park, his arrival in Major League Baseball with the Los Angeles Dodgers. What did that mean to the game in Korea and its impact among the fan base of Korean Americans?
I was actually living in Canada at the time when he first made into the majors, and we often talk about how Chan-Ho Park's career in the majors coincided with some of the difficult moments in Korean society with the financial crisis in the late 90s, and how his performances, his success with the Dodgers gave Korean people hope and inspiration. But I don't think there's enough conversation about how much of was it a source of pride for Korean people living overseas, not just in LA, US, but for myself in Canada, we could point to this player pitching for the Dodgers and say, you know what, there's a Korean guy pitching in the Major League Baseball, and it's pretty good. So it was a great source of pride for Korean people living overseas at the time, not just Koreans in Korea. And it certainly drove up a lot of interest in baseball, Major League Baseball for sure, but also in the KBO. The popularity of the game at the time, maybe not quite up to the level that we see now. The teams weren't selling out. The league wasn't drawing millions of fans at the time, but with Channel making the foray into the big leagues, people had a lot of baseball to watch. Let's say, in the morning hours during their morning commute, they could tune in, watch Channel pitch, and then after work, coming home at night, they could tune in and watch KBO games on TV. So there was a lot of baseball back then.
Oh, excellent. All right. Thanks for that great setup. I'm going to go to one of our headliners here, Jee-Ho Park. You just heard this great introduction about what it meant for you to come to the major leagues back in the 90s. Can you talk about your experience, what it was like for you personally coming to Major League Baseball? What did this mean to you as a Korean? And what were some of the reactions of fans, of other players? Like, Jee-Ho, please, over to you, as they say.
All right, thanks, Mark. Well, actually, I couldn't realize anything when I come to the United States because nobody knew I'm coming to Major League. And I stopped at Hanyang University after second year, and then I come to the Dodgers. And then actually everything was new, but especially, the people, and culture. But I didn't even know in the minor league is, what is minor league is, what is major league is. But only thing I know, like two things I know, I'm gonna face the American hitters and who has powers. And then another thing is I'm gonna, throw the fastballs as hard as I can. That's the only two things I know. And then, in the flight to the America from at that time in Gimpo Airport, now Incheon Airport, but it takes like about more than 10 hours. I couldn't sleep at all because I was so nervous, and then nervous for the being, pitching in the Dodger Stadium because exactly 24 months ago at the time, and I was watching Dodger game when I was a high school kid playing for the national team. We play in Los Angeles. I was watching the Dodger game at the top deck, but I couldn't see the players playing because it's too far away. Our team was too far away. But I saw the whole stadium, the beautiful stadium on one side. So I remind every day about the stadium. So on the way to the Los Angeles to sign in Dodgers, I was 10 hours. I only think about the Dodgers still when I saw the twin end. 4 months ago at that stadium, they said I'm gonna pitch at that stadium on the damn mound. So I was so excited and nervous, so I couldn't sleep. But when I get there, I met the Tommy Lasorda, Peter O'Malley, and bunch of English speakers. It makes me more happy. So it was a great experience, and especially when I pitched first game in the Dodger Stadium, I ran from the bullpen to the mound at the 8th inning. That game, Dodgers lost against Atlanta, no-hitter game. And I pitched that 8th inning. I can't remember how my legs feel because I flew to the mound from the bullpen because I ran too hard. Then this is a great moment. I couldn't throw any strikes for first 8 pitches. I couldn't throw strikes. So 2 batters walked straight. And then the next game, the Pendleton hit in the double, and then we gave up 2 runs. And then Mike Piazza, catcher, and then Ron Ferenowski, pitching coach, came up to mound, and they said something, but I didn't even understand. Right? So, but it's good. Was I just at a time to take a deep breath? They said, something like, "Are you okay?" or "Can you throw?" Whatever, they say something, but I say just yes, 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 okay, okay, okay. Next the Lopez was catcher at Atlanta, and then he got struck out, and then ground ball and the foul ball, and then I, finished the inning, walked to the dugout, and then the 50,000 fans, they give me really, cheering, and then Tommy Russell, the whole teammates give me the big five, high five, and then they, and a big hug, and even I gave up 2 runs and 2 walks, and this is I couldn't understand. I gave up 2 runs and 2 walks, and they still happy, But I realized that, after that, because Rasoda brought the first strikeout balls to me, and so when I get to that ball, that inning was, I gave it 2 runs and 2 walks, but they inning was the historical and the innings for the Korean, especially in the major league. So it was a great moment. I couldn't, I talked about this so many times to the young generation in Korea, and especially in the baseball, high school baseball kid or little league baseball kids. But for me, it's very special. Also, during the IMF, is it too long? Is it okay?
No, I was just going to ask you the question that you started to answer yourself. What did you what do you tell the young Korean players about this? What do you tell them about this experience, and what did you learn from this?
Well, it's a Korea baseball and American baseball is very different for me. And actually, before I go to major league, I was only play in the amateur, and I didn't play in the professional. So it's hard to compare in the major league and the amateur. But still, the culture-wise, very different. And we're like, I know Jerry knows. I think he was very confused when he was come to Korea, when he was in Korea. So we are like even 1 year older players, very, very strict to the younger player, right? And especially in the amateur, in the college, and the guys, the freshmen, the sophomore or the senior players is like a god for us, right? So whatever they say, we wash their laundries or wash their the shoes, everything. But when I go to state, everybody looks like, for me, it's like uncle, because I was a 20 years old, and everybody like over 30s or late 20s, and especially they're Americans. So they're for me, there's like a big, like a coach, So I never play the guys the age more than 1 or 2 years older than me. So that was a pretty shock. So I was really, actually, honestly, I was very nervous to being with them, right? That's different. And then they came to me and very nice and friendly, especially Tommy Rosoda. It's like, grandfather, but he's being like very friendly, just like the same age kid, right? And that's the big difference for me. Is actually it's hard to adjust because I don't know what to do, because they treat me friendly, but I treat them like uncle and grandfather, and they don't like that, So that's a very difficult to learn, with the language, and then
that's great. That is perfect, because you brought in Jerry. And Jerry, can you just talk about just comment on what Chan-Ho said about the cultural differences of foreign players in the major leagues, and then if you could pivot to what it was like for you to come to Korea as the first foreign manager ever, and talk about some of the cultural differences you experienced, kind of through the eyes of an American going the opposite way that Chan-Ho went.
Well, first of all, it's great to be with all of you. Mark, I actually got to see you on the ESPN broadcast that you did. Kathleen and I go way back, right? And Chan-Ho and I have been friends for a long time. Speaking about Korea coming over as the first manager, foreign manager, it it was difficult in a lot of ways, but it was made easy by people like Chan-Ho. Chan-Ho and I have a very close friend and a mentor to both of us. Roy Jin-Yoo is a very, very good friend and mentor to all of us. I would never have gotten the opportunity to go over there if it wasn't for Roy. He is chairman of the Busan Corporation, and but it's guys like that that helped out. And Kathleen, I probably bothered her way too many times being the being the ambassador. I probably bugged her and called her on the phone much too often, but it was good to have everybody. I had a support group that was second to none, which we'll get to later, because I think that that's a big part of what the managers, the foreign managers that have come over since I managed there. I think that's the difficult part. You have to have an extremely good support group in order to achieve the things that some of them have and are looking forward to achieve. But Chan-Ho, speaking about the older players, that was something that I had to instill in the players and the coaches, that, you know, once you're on the baseball field, you know, you have to treat them as equals. If you don't, you run into a problem of, let's just say Chan-Ho's a pitcher, so pitchers would not throw inside to older players, right, Chan-Ho? And they just, because they were afraid to hit him. If they did hit him, they bowed to him. It's kind of a no-no. He's talking about hanging out with the older players and how tough it is. That's the one thing that I think was to my advantage, was I let the players into my space immediately. That's the first thing I did after meeting them. You know, I had them come into my office, and that didn't happen. The manager's office was totally off limit to the players. They don't speak to the manager during the games. I was just the opposite. I would go over to them and hang out with them, you know, kind of to the point where they felt like I was an equal to them. And that was one of the things that you had to overcome. I mean, it's something that you don't think about when you're here, but over there, I had to make sure guys like Curtis Jung, who was my interpreter and also my assistant, and Chairman Yu, it was that was something that they helped me with, just so I wasn't, you know, stepping on the feet of the culture. It was very important to me that I recognized the culture and stayed with it, recognized it and stayed with it as you know, as much as I could. It was very hard because I didn't know the language, but my experience over there was it was incredible. I was glad that Kathleen got a chance to experience it. Chan-Ho talked to me about it several times as it was happening. I talked to you know, a lot of people and even the players. Once I got them to understand that, you know, they can come and talk to me at any time, it made things a lot easier. It was a lot harder with the coaches to bring the coaches on board to my style than it was the players.
Excellent. Hey, Jerry, you're breaking up a little bit, so I'm going to go to Cathy because I think we're at a perfect pivot point. Cathy, I'm going to bring you in here. You heard Chan-Ho and Jerry both emphasize the theme of culture and the importance of that in the game. You know, you have had. Let's take a broader step back. You've had a long history professionally, personally, in and around Korean culture. Can you talk about some of these elements, these nuances that were important that Chan-Ho and Jerry might have touched on, but just more broadly, the importance of sports in Korean culture, impact on Korean politics, kind of the broader view, Cathy, from where you sat?
Yeah, well, Mark, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and it's great, especially to see Chan-Ho and Jerry again, even remotely. I mean, yeah, first of all, there's a whole other story or a big story we could talk about sports and the importance of it in the modern Korea, South Korea's own rise and success, and also in U.S.-Korean relations. And maybe we'll get to some of that. But it's what you said. I am so touched, I think, and moved by hearing both what 박찬호 and Jerry Royster have to say about. I mean, here are two people who are at the top of their game professionally in every way. And what they're talking about are these incredible challenges of how do you make that mesh in a very different culture. And, you know, in a much, much smaller way, that's what Tom Byrne and I dealt with as Peace Corps volunteers in the 1970s. You know, your biggest challenge was, right, how did you deal in a society that was so different from your own? And how could you bring things to, you know, whatever skills you were being asked to apply, how could you contribute in that environment? And I have to say, I mean, I think Chan-Ho and Jerry are amazing examples of making that happen. And I have to tell you a little story about each of them because, I mean, I love baseball, but I wouldn't be on this panel on the basis of my baseball expertise. And when I first met Park Chan-Ho, actually, and it was when I was in Korea as ambassador, and the KBO, you know, been very successful, and the whole idea of, you know, having Korean players go to the United States and play in the major leagues was something that was certainly unimaginable some decades earlier, and when I had earlier been in Korea. But I met Chan-Ho not around sports. I met him because we were both at a function that was supporting multicultural, multi-ethnic families in Korea, the Pearl Buck Foundation. And we got into this conversation about how Chan-Ho had grown up in a small town close to the small town I lived in the 1970s. And I think we figured out that he was like a kindergartner when I was I was teaching middle school boys in Korea. And for me, it was like, this says so much about certainly Chan-Ho's journey and his genius, but also about Korea's journey, that this little boy in Kongju, where there were no one spoke English because there were no foreigners there, except maybe occasionally a Peace Corps volunteer. And, you know, there wasn't a baseball field as far as I know, or at least one that we would recognize as a baseball field. And how did he in his life get to this point where he's in Major League Baseball, you know, and then not just sort of leave and say, I'm not coming back, but come back and be working on US-Korean relations and Korea's own modern rise to be a much more diverse and democratic place. And, you know, similarly, Jerry, I mean, to meet him and to see this was unimaginable in Korea that they would bring in a foreigner to do something like that, to lead a baseball team and to work in a Korean organization. I mean, you know, Mark, you and I and our military friends, when we're in Korea, we kind of have as in diplomats or military, we're running things kind of by American rules. You know, Jerry's in there, he's kind of figure out what the Korean rules are, and the cultural elements of that are really profound. And it was amazing to see in Busan, which is a pretty tough city in a lot of ways. I lived in Busan for 2 years too in the 80s, and the way they embraced him, and the impact. And Jerry, I hope you don't mind saying it had on attitudes towards Americans and about African Americans and about athletes. And, you know, I really do think, I mean, you know, Jerry, during my time there, I mean, as an American, was a much more effective diplomat in many, many ways than I was in his reach and his ability to do these things. But he brought so much joy to people. And so I also have to say to Jerry, I still have a bobblehead of you on my desk.
That's all right. That's a good thing.
All right. Great stuff, Cathy. Let me, that was, you know, we didn't coordinate this in advance, but you basically put a bow around kind of round one, which was the broader cultural piece. I want to go one level down, talk a little bit about a little more on the baseball side now. Let me go back to Jee-Ho quickly. And Jee-Ho, you mentioned a little bit where things are in KBO today. Can you talk a little bit about Korean players in MLB today, the evolution since Chan-Ho to now? What are we seeing? What's kind of going on in that community of players?
Sure. Right now, there are 4 Korean players in Major League Baseball. Hyunjin Ryu, Ri Hyunjin with the Toronto Blue Jays, Choi Ji-man Choi with the Tampa Bay Rays, Chu Shin-soo with the Texas Rangers, and Kim Kwang-hyun, most recent addition to the majors roster with the St. Louis Cardinals. They took different paths to the majors. With Choi Ji-man and Chu Shin-soo, they signed out of high school they worked their way up through the minors and they reached the majors, I guess kind of hard way. With Ryu and Kim, they were all-star players in the KBO, MVP winners, two of the best pitchers in this league. And then after putting in some years in the KBO, they went over to the majors, signing through either as a free agent or posting a system. So going back to what Chano did, how he was able to sort of open the doors for a lot of people, a lot of players that followed him. He was the first guy there, and he did great. And it kind of sent a message to maybe a lot of big league clubs that didn't know that Korea had quality players. It sent the right kind of message that, hey, you know what, this country might be a pretty good resource for some players. You can only draft so many American or Canadian kids. You got to look overseas to find talent, to find that edge. And then I think the teams were coming to Asia. Japan obviously has a longer history of baseball, but also Korea. So right after Chano, we saw a whole bunch of pitchers. They went to the majors. Kim Byung-hyun, BK, the closer for the Arizona Diamondbacks, won the World Series in 2001, and a lot of other players they went over. And in recent years too, there's been a pretty steady stream of Korean players going from the KBO to the majors. And also there are a whole bunch of kids who sign out of high school, go to the minors, trying to work their way up, kind of take the hard path to the majors as well.
All right, thanks, Gio. That is outstanding. I'm going to bring Chan-Ho in now. You mentioned his role in opening the door. Chan-Ho, from where you sit today, what advice do you have for the Korean players that are in Major League Baseball? What advice do you have in terms of younger players who are right on the verge of making it into the major leagues? And a broader question, anything that you would like to see more of or less of in KBO or Major League Baseball? So you get to be commissioner for a day. What would you do? But just your advice and on these subjects.
Yeah, to the younger player, especially in Korea, the amateurs, and I started dreaming playing the major league, especially at the Dodger Stadium, because I saw the Dodger Stadium 1991, and 4 months later, I made it my dream. So I want tell to younger player, so make sure have the dream. If no one think, if they think no plan, no dreaming, and they don't know where they're going to. So make sure set the dream, what they really want to do, and who's the target, which players target in the major league or KBO league, right? And then make the plan and follow the dream. Don't forget, every day remind, so they will make the dream, right? That's what I did it, right? And then first time I watched the Dodger game, I bought a Dodger jacket when I on the way back to come back to home from LA. And I wear Dodger jacket. I remind the Dodger game, Dodger Stadium every day when I wear the Dodger jacket, right? So that makes me, I can't forget about the pitching in the Dodger Stadium. And I don't know, that's the being major league player, or if I cannot go there because no one go there play before me. So I just make the dreaming. I'm pitching the blue Dodger Stadium with the blue uniform, something like that, right? So that's like dreaming come true. And then the players playing Major League now, and Shin-Soo Choo, Yu Hyun-jin, Kwang Hyun Kim, and he's the Ji-Man Choi. The only 4 players play in the major, which is for me is kind of sad, because I wish more players play in the major league, just like LPGA pros, the great players in LPGA. But to them, well, after I had a chance to meet more people to talk about my career, talk about how they're enjoying watching my game, especially during the IMF in Korea, right? And during my career, I couldn't realize deeply and how I used to getting, fan support from Korea, especially during the IMF, because I was there. But I was busy to just compete every day in the game, prepare the game, or trying to sometimes be away from the fan because I don't want to get, bother. And I was, embarrassed, couldn't enjoy it with the fans, and especially fans, in Korea enough, So I want to tell them, believe it, is more energy is coming from Korea or everywhere, especially from Korean, people, and much more than what they realize now. So before they retire, enjoy playing, and that's really meaning to the Korean people in Korea, especially now, and until they retire, and then also make more friends, who they can contact after retire, right? So I still talk to Sean Green when I was the Dodger teammates when I was there. I still talk to Hideo Nomos, and a few players I still talk to, but I had so many teammates, but I miss them. I wonder, how they're doing. I'm sure their kid. We used to playing in the clubhouse. I just wonder how they kids doing now. So maybe if they can get along with the players, get friends more and as teammates, and if you can be you can still contact after retire. I think that's the makes a better life. So that's
interesting.
They're much better than their career will be much better than my career. So nothing advice about the baseball.
No, great stuff. No, it's life advice. And, at the Korea Society, we're always trying to bring Koreans and Americans together. And you're giving fantastic advice on how to keep in touch, how to build those bridges, keep those bridges between the U.S. and Korea. And quite frankly, using the great game of baseball is that a key, basically a key bridge, key element of that. So, Chan-Ho, great stuff. Let me go to Jerry then. Jerry, first I'm going to pick up on Chan-Ho's question, but then ask you a broader one. Did you keep in touch with enough people of your teammates? I know it's probably a little harder, but then just you've been away from KBO from a little while. What are your kind of thoughts on the KBO, the state of KBO today? You clearly have been watching it on ESPN. Your thoughts and your analysis.
Well, I've never really stopped watching it since I was coaching there and managing there. I was there in 2008, 2009, and 2010. Made just a ton of friends, and if I mention one, I'm in trouble because there's hundreds of them. I have so much. I would say over 3/4 of my social media is from Korean baseball. And one thing you can rest assured, whenever Lotte is not doing well, that's when I hear from them the most. And Chan-Ho and I play golf together, so we get to talk about it from time to time. But no, I'm deeply entrenched in Korean. Chan-Ho and I were both invited to. Since we are both golfers, we were both invited to the President's Cup when it was in Korea. I want to say 2016 or 15. One of you guys can get that right for me.
You got it. You got it. 15. You got it.
Yeah, and I flew. They flew me back over. I got to fly with the team, with the American team over there, and it was funny when I landed in Korea. People already knew that I was coming, not because I announced it. I don't know how they knew, but when I got off the plane, I had more media around me than the American team did around them. I mean, Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson and some of the great golfers that I'm sure they were wondering what was going on. But my experience there, like I said in the beginning, was so unique that it's never ending, and I still have friends. Bobby Valentine is the one that got me over there. He was managing in Japan for the Lotte Giants, and he got me he's the one that asked if I would come over. And when I did, you know, it was an instant relationship, and it was the instant relationship with the people. Kathleen could also tell you that, I mean, I interacted more with the people than I probably should have. And I got, but nothing but good things happened because of it. It's all about relationship and embracing yourself with the situation that you're in. And mine was in a foreign country that was as foreign as it could possibly be. Chan-Ho, I was working for the Dodgers in 1990 when he came over. It was an instant hit, but he'll tell you now that when I walked around that golf course, it was bedlam. It was people coming up because they all thought that I was coming back to manage again. But it's a constant with me. That happened last winter. It's happened a couple of times, but I love the Korean culture. I love the Korean people. They've been amazing to me, and my family. My daughter's name is Kara. My daughter's name is Kara. The people that one of the most famous groups in Korea was a girl group named Kara, and I think that helped out a lot also.
Outstanding, Jerry. That's great stuff. I'm not going to venture into the shark-infested waters of who's the better golfer between you and Chan-Ho, or I will not, reveal that, the Busan fan lobby is one of the most intense lobbies in all of the world. But I will say, I know of what you speak, because to this day, people, as I said at the top, ask me about you and are you coming back, all that. All right, so over to Cathy, and then we're going to go to kind of a lightning speed round. But Cathy, just to put a bow on this round here, remarkable couple of years for Korea on the pop culture front, the soft power. We just heard a lot about from Chan-Ho, from Jerry, about building bridges, relationships, all this, the good that's come out of this game of baseball. Broader picture, you have BTS, you have Parasite, now KBO being broadcast in the United States, going global, as was said earlier in our broadcast. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of this soft power commodity and what it means for Korea?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of veer away from saying soft power, but in the case of South Korea, I guess I would say sort of, the non-security or non-military elements of power. Maybe that's, and I think for we Americans, I mean, a lot of Americans, certainly of my generation, but even later, we kind of got to know South Korea through the Korean War and so on. And now I take pride, as I know Tom Bird does too. We were in Korea in the 1970s. We knew South Korea was cool before anybody else did. I have to tell you, in the 1970s, the South Korea was not considered to be a very cool place by Americans and maybe even by Koreans, right? It was kind of dreary. But, we saw then all of this energy and creativity and, little boys like 박찬호 out there practicing their baseball, and young girls thinking one day I'm going to play golf when they let me onto the golf course, and, and all this music, all this talent. But it did take, economic opportunity, and it took democratization. The whole notion that baseball was going to distract people from wanting more. In fact, it made them want more. So I think it was out of all of that, out of this economic blossoming of Korea, gets a lot of attention in our kind of policy circles, out of all of its hard strength, if you like, and out of its, most of all, its democratization came what is this blossoming of creativity by the Korean people. And sports has been such an important part of it. I mean, I was in Korea during the 1980s at the embassy as a political officer. And, I got there in the early 80s when it started with, Chunduan after Gwangju, and it ended with an election and the Olympics. And in the midst of that, then the development of these things like the KBO, which again started as a way to distract people. In fact, I remember the slogan then was the 3 S's. I don't know if you've ever heard this. They didn't call it, it wasn't, democratization is a bad word, liberalization was a good word, and they called it sex, screen, and sports. Well, screen, so they promoted films and they promoted sports. And what has it done? It actually, and rather, with democratization, brought Korea this standing in the world as a place that is innovative in every sense. Because I think these things go together, you know, of innovation, whether it's in the economy or in sports or in culture and art. So, you know, just I think it's really brought South Korea, which I think often feels like, you know, North Korea gets all the attention because they make all the trouble, right? But South Korea, because of its engagement across the front, it's not just the Samsung TVs and the LG washing machines, although we like those. It's all of this creativity and all of this talent, and the way that also builds ties between people, because we can all, you know, relate to baseball, and the fact that all of this is done, and of films. And this is done in a sense that we actually share a lot. You know, it's not a nationalistic thing. I mean, there's certainly national pride that goes along with it. But our young people really want the same things, and we see where we really do share a lot of, you know, common aspirations. And what Chan-Ho says about what he tells young people to kind of, you know, even in very challenging times, ways to pursue their dreams. So I think Korea has become, I mean, something that is listened to and stands tall in the world because of all of these talents and energy and commitment that it's brought, not just to his own country, but to the world and our enjoyment.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Cathy, as always. Really thoughtful analysis. And you touched on a couple of things, but one of the elements we really didn't have time to get into tonight, but is women's sports in Korea. And I'd be remiss, you know, we've talked about golf, we've talked about Gongju, Park Se-ri, you know, one of contemporary and a friend of Chan-Ho Park, two of the greatest athletes in Korean history coming out of this small town, and all the things that have been done on women's sports to that end. Okay, so with that, we're through round two. We're going to go to round three. We're going to go to a lightning round, and this I've tried to get people more on baseball. We've tended to stay more on culture, which I think is a good thing and very apropos for the Korea Society. But for the baseball fans out there, I'm going to go to some just some fun facts in the final 10 minutes or so. Take some questions from the audience. So if you have questions, keep them coming. And we're going to start with Jerry Royster. Jerry Royster, toughest KBO team to beat when you managed the Lotte Giants, and the toughest place to play.
I hate that you brought up this subject. We lost. We finally made it to the playoffs. I don't think we had been there, and people say 6 years, but I think it was closer to 10. We finally make it to the playoffs, and we made it 3 years in a row. And we lost every year. 2 out of the 3 years, we lost to Busan Bears. But when I was there, it was probably SK Wyverns were. I mean, they were the team in KBO in the late 2000s.
Okay, great, Jerry. All right, Chan-Ho, to you. Best major league hitter you faced? Not Jerry Royster. You can't say Jerry Royster.
Obviously, Jerry Royster. Well, for me, Barry Bonds was the toughest hitter because he didn't chase the bad pitches. You know, he sees more balls and he swings strikes.
That's right. You got him right in the prime of your career. Okay, give me your number two then. You got Barry Bonds, unbelievable hitter. Your number two.
Todd Helton.
Oh, okay.
Rockies.
Yeah.
He contact every balls. You know, and in the strike zone he hit a home run. In the out of strike zone he hit the base hits.
Okay. So disciplined hitters were your nemesis. All right, Cathy, over to you. You, as you mentioned earlier, are not someone who wakes up every morning and watches KBO on TV, but you are, you know, a sports fan, I would say, and someone who participates. So we've got to bring you in NCAA bracket style here and ask, who's your pick to win KBO this year?
Well, just on the basis of, I guess, the cycle of history, I'm going to pick the Kia Tigers, because I remember when they were really big in the 80s and they came back again about 20 years later. So maybe they're going to come around again.
All right. And a new manager, Matt Williams, following the footsteps of Jerry Royster. Okay, so Gwangju, Hete Tigers, Kia Tigers, ready to go. Maybe Jerry Royster's driving a Kia right now in his car. I don't know. All right, so we're going to go to.
I'm getting ready to buy one for my daughter. She's getting ready to get one of those cell toes.
All right, they're not a sponsor here tonight either. So that's just, whatever. All right, so we're going to go to Mr. Yoo. Mr. Yoo, KBO Stadium. I'm going to ask you, you cover all these games. You're in all the stadiums. Where's the best food in all of KBO?
You're asking the wrong guy because I don't, because we get the press food. I don't get to go to concessions so much. But in terms of this press cafeteria, I would say Jamsil, baseball stadium in Seoul. If you just go there every day, you probably put on extra 20 pounds by the end of the season.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask, what's your favorite stadium then? If you're going to cop out on the press answer there, you have to get the favorite overall stadium.
I will always say I don't have a voting interest in the KBO. The only baseball team I cheer for is in Canada. So I'm gonna say I'm tempted to say Rogers Center in Toronto, but in the KBO, I like Sajik. Just because, when the fans are there, it's this the atmosphere. And I'll say, when the team is doing well, there's no better city to play in as a player than Busan and for the Lotte Giants.
That's awesome. Yeah, the bags on the head, all that great stuff. Fan culture, Jerry Royster, you can't beat it. All right, just so you know, we're interactive here. I got an email from Ambassador Harris, the sitting ambassador in Seoul, cheering us on. So a shout out to the OB Bears. I know Harry Harris is a big OB Bears fan back in the day. All right, Jee-Ho, over to you. Question for you. When you had to throw a strike, you're facing a tough hitter. You got Bonds, somebody like that. You had to get a strike. No way to put him on base. What's your go-to pitch?
Fastballs.
Four-seam fastball, right? That's your bread and butter, or
that's the beginning of my career, and then end of my career, I throw more two-seam fastball. So make a little bit moving with the fastball, especially one ball, no strikes. I like to throw the two-seam fastball so they can, hit in the ground balls.
Okay, so now you have to come off your fastball. You've thrown it a couple times. He's clearly on you. Where are you going? Change up? Or are you just going back to the fastball, running a different direction?
Well, lately I enjoy throwing the changeup small than the curveball, right? So my strikeout pitch is curveball, like they call slow. Like the hard curve, right? And then, I think now it's changeup is his favorite. So I enjoy watching throw the Hyunjin Ryu throw the changeups a lot. It's amazing. And so I like this changeup is my second pitch favorite right now. So it makes a lot of ground ball and double plays ball. So. Okay, so so true to form, fastball pitcher, double play. Sharp ground ball to Jerry Royster, man in the infield, gets you out of trouble every time. All right, let's go to Cathy. Cathy, Ambassador Harris just wrote in. It's a privilege of many U.S. ambassadors. You get to throw out a first pitch at these games called a shigu, and it's kind of a production in Korea, right? You've got the teams in the field. You've got the umpires there. You just place the pitcher. Talk to us about your. You did this once or a couple of times, I think once, but
once.
What were you nervous? What was it like? Talk to us about that.
I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And my two goals were not to be accused, because I have two brothers, of throwing like a girl. I'm sorry. And secondly, to make sure the ball didn't hit the ground before it went over the plate or somewhere near the plate. So, and I did it actually in Busan with all those fans, right, at the Lotte Giants game. So no, I was absolutely terrified. So I practiced with my tennis coach, and but then when I went out there to do it, I remember this really clearly. I was so nervous, and I had been practicing, but then they didn't take me to the pitcher's mound. They took me like halfway to home plate. And I thought, well, if I insist on going to the pitcher's mound and then I throw it on the ground, that won't be a good look. A little bit. Anyway, I overprepared. It's a very Korean thing to do.
All right, awesome. Okay, good memories, fond memories.
Fun.
And you've got the Lotte Giants gear to prove it, right? That's
Absolutely.
great. Okay, All right. Going back to Mr. Yoo here. Quickly, you are a Blue Jays fan. Who is your all-time favorite Blue Jays player?
Carlos Delgado.
All right, yes.
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, we're running out of time. I'm going to go back to
Okay.
Chan-Ho. Chan-Ho, favorite KBO and MLB stadiums? I guess you're going to say Dodger Stadium, but
Well, I feel really bad to say the favorite stadium in Korea because I didn't have a favorite stadium in Korea because I was playing the major league before I come to Korea. So all the stadium was, very uncomfortable. But yeah, so every time I complain a lot, every day, but the Hanwha Eagles was my team. So my first game wasn't at the Daejeon; it was in the Cheongju. It's like home stadium, right? So I think Cheongju is they play only maybe the 6 or 10 games in the season as a home stadium of the Hanwha Eagles. So I pitched there. First game I pitched, and I won the first game 1 for my career in KBO. So that's my Cheongju Stadium is my favorite stadium. I can tell.
gotta go. Okay.
Obviously Dodger Stadium, right? And then the stadium I made it, dream. And then Petco Park is a beautiful stadium, and forever is the favorite stadium. And the pitcher, and especially the pitcher's park, So. And
All right. Awesome.
I hate the Colorado Rocky Stadium.
Ball is flying out. Coors Field, right? Terrible. Not a pitcher's park, right at all. All right. That is awesome. Let me come. We're basically out of time. I'm going to try to squeeze in just a couple more questions. Got some from the audience here. I'm going to go to Mr. Yoo again. Greatest KBO player of all time.
I would have to say Son Dong-yeol, the pitcher for the Tigers in the 80s. Maybe if Chan-Ho had played in the KBO, maybe he would have been the greatest player, right? But he didn't, so he went to the majors. Yeah, just one season that sticks out for me. He's 1986, 22 starts, 39 games overall, and 19 complete games. And for the year, he had 1.20 ERA. For his career, over 1,600 innings and 1.20 career ERA. I would say he's the greatest player in the KBO history.
Great stuff. All right, Jerry Royster, put you on the spot here. This is a question that I used to get all the time, so I'm just going to give it to you. Will you come back and manage again in KBO if there's an opportunity?
Yes.
I would love to come back. I want to come back there. I'd love to. Yes, I would come back if the opportunity presented itself. Stop, Chan-Ho, stop. I'm going to see you later.
All right,
I would definitely come back, Mark. I would.
That is great. Yeah, you would be welcome back with open arms. I am confident of that. Last one. I'm going to ask one more to Cathy. Cathy, when you met with Jerry Royster all the time, what surprised you about Jerry Royster and the team's, the baseball culture?
Well, yeah, I mean, Korean baseball culture, and especially Lotte Giants culture, is pretty unique, right? And so I think just, I never got over my astonishment and enthusiasm about the fans and just the whole vibe in the stadium. And for Jerry, I mean, it didn't surprise me, but yeah, he was loved, and it seemed like he'd been in Korea forever. And yet he was quintessentially American. So yeah, to me, he was the quintessential, American experience in Korea.
That's great.
Thanks,
right,
Kathleen. Just like I told you.
All right. All right. One more. We got 2 more questions left. One for, we're going to go back to Mr. Yoo quickly. When Major League Baseball comes back, what is that going to do to KBO on ESPN?
Well, the deal is supposed to be for this season. So they're supposed to telecast all the postseason games as well, right through the Korean series. So this for this one season. obviously the timings are different anyway. So KBO games will be in the morning hours in the Eastern time. So yeah, they would keep the games on, I believe, on ESPN even after Major League Baseball season begins.
Okay. All right. Great. We are out of time. I'm going to go to the last question to Jee-Ho. Jee-Ho, this is one that I'm going to take personal prerogative in asking. I'm just going to say, how cool was it to play catch with Mark Lippert on your high school field? We drove the ambassador's limo over. I still have the pictures. My dad was proud of me. You know, and your ball, unbelievably, it's so fast and it moves, you know, and my hand, I think, still hurts from it. So what do you, any comments there to close us out?
Yeah, that was great. It was great. I mean, you know, great history, you know, the American ambassador come to my hometown and first pitch in my Little League baseball game. And, you know, I was asking, hey, Mark, we didn't have a plan. So I just brought, you know, hey, Mark, would you like to go to my high school? And he said, oh, yeah. And we can play catch there. Oh, yeah. And then we went there. And then all the students stopped class and they were watching over the window to the limousine come to the field, right? It's not grass field, it's like dirt field, whole dirt. And the American flag and Korean flag on the limousine. And they just surprised, what's going on there? Who's them? And then Mark Lippert, you know, out of the car. And we start playing catch, and then all the students came off the field, like, you know, like thousands, you know, students came out field, like Mark Lippert became the BTS, you know.
Well, I will say, like, that was one of the highlights. It was so cool. It was great to spend the day with you down there, learn a lot about your hometown, learn a lot about where you're from, and make it pretend like, you know, that I could ever dare to be in the same field with you. So you made me feel good. And I'll say this, talk about influence. You just called your high school. You said, we're coming over, and the red carpet rolled out for you. My high school doesn't even own me anymore. They pretend I never went there. So anyway, I'm going to end on that and just say thanks to the panel. Thanks for really an all-star lineup here. We learned a lot about Korean culture. We learned a lot about Korean and American baseball. We learned a lot, I think, about how to build bridges using people-to-people diplomacy. And it's a real honor to be with some of the biggest names in KBO, in diplomatic circles, in journalistic sports circles that have ever worked in and around this relationship. So to Chan-Ho, to Jerry, to Cathy, to Jee-Ho, thank you for an outstanding panel, and really appreciate everybody who tuned in, from Harry Harris to the Samsung guys, David Steele, who's been texting me about the Lions jersey behind me. Thanks again. Thanks to the panel, and we really do appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.